introduced. I wanted to see from a show of hands who here has ever competed in any sort of coffee competition. So a lot of you. Yeah. Who is competing this week? Awesome. Very cool. Who here plans on never, ever, ever competing? All right. So we're going to dig into the coffee competitions, and it's not just the barista competitions. We're talking about all coffee competitions. We have a really great panel here that are really going to showcase the gamut of what these competitions look like. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves because they all have very interesting stories, and I want them to tell it. So just go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, hello. I'm Holly. Hi. I started at the very first regional that the SCA put on in the Midwest, and like 2002. It was much different. I got second place. I used 3 different syrups. Yeah. And it was delicious. So, you know, it's come a long way. But I shifted into judging after that, and then I ended up on the head judge committee for a while from 2006 to 2010. And that was when we only had like 1 panel of judges for the entire competition sometimes. And we had 10 regionals to run. So we've gotten it a little more streamlined now. It's pretty great. And then in the midst of that, I was coaching all sorts of people. And I guess when it comes to competition specifically, the whole Pete winning the WBC thing really was a big deal for me. But yeah, that's my competitive history. Oh, and I ran it the last couple years. So now I think I've done all the things. I can stop now.
Hi everyone, my name is Mallory Leight. I'm here from Springfield, Missouri. Not quite as exciting as Kansas City, but I'll own it. So I am on the competitions committee, serving as a head judge. I've been judging for about 5 years now. I have not competed, but I really love judging, and I really love working with new judges, especially women. But in my everyday life, I'm a barista and bartender, so I work more on the front end of the cafe experience, and excited to be talking about competition with y'all.
My name is Jenny Bonchak. I am the founder and CEO of Slingshot Coffee Company in Raleigh, North Carolina. Yay, thanks. I'm also the second place winner of the 2015 United States Brewers Cup last year. Thank you. Actually, the Brewers Cup last year was my very first time competing. And I actually competed in our regional and took 7th place, which, as you know, the top 6 move on. Fortunately, the 6th person dropped out, and that left an open spot for me. So I decided that Nationals, I was going to bring it, so I did. So Nationals was actually the very first time I was ever on stage doing Brewers Cup. So I did have the privilege of coaching my husband, Jonathan Peaches, who some of you may know, who was also very successful in the Brewers Cup, both regionally and nationally. And that is my competitive history. So I don't have, aside from being a superbly competitive person, that's my coffee competition history. Kind of a balance of being a judge and a competitor. So, and I'm competing again this year, so yeah. Bottoms up.
Hi, I'm Andrea. I'm co-owner of Onxy Coffee Lab. Yay! Hi, from Arkansas. You guys know where that is, though, because it's close. That's cool. Yeah, so this is my 3rd year competing. Really excited to be on the panel and here at competition. My competitive history starts really when I came out of the womb. I grew up playing basketball, skin knees with guys, and long time not board game player because of how competitive I am. But my husband and I settle lots of scores over competitive hours of rock, paper, scissors. So I love all things competition, and yeah. So hi.
All right, so we're going to dig right into it. The conversation that happens a lot almost every single year right around competition time is people start to see there's 6 dudes in the finals or something like that, and they say, the competitions are sexist, or why aren't there more women? What's going on with that? And so, we've been having a lot of conversations, and one of the big things that we were kind of feeling, and I think that, there's a lot of conversation around this is whether or not there really is sexism in these competitions. What are the rules and regulations, written in a way that we can kind of try and avoid that, and where might these things be coming up? So I wanted to actually push this over to Mallory as a head judge, and I just was curious, as a head judge, and you're training up these competitors, and I had a chance to sit in on the judges calibration yesterday, training up all the new judges for both Brewers Cup and Barista Competition. So from your perspective, what are ways that you see are really controlling that area of sexism, and where do you feel like that stuff is maybe still coming through in the way that you've experienced other competitors perceived and judges' perception?
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to talk, first of all, I've been on the competitions committee for 2 years now, and when I started, there were 3 women and about 15 gentlemen, and now it's about split 50-50. So that's been exciting to see. And so as we as women are taking more of these decision-making and leadership roles and being able to take on more instructor roles and train up new judges, hopefully that is impacting the judges' experience as well, and how they come into these panels and deliberations, and how the competitors interact with the judges. I think we are in a very good place, and it's getting better and better. So actually, when the question came up in our email correspondence, it was a little bit refreshing for me, because I thought, I'm actually really excited about where we are and where we are going, not just as women competitors, but as women judges too. And so I think, and we talked a little bit in our email correspondence about the biases that might exist. I've not been in this position, but how does a woman competitor feel when she has a panel composed mostly of men? And actually, my first panel today, I was the only woman on the panel. But then as the day goes on, you see it mix up. And so, but I think these biases can go both ways. And in my conversations with other judges, head judges, sensory and tech, about their experience deliberating and calibrating on panels, one story came up where it was a female competitor, and they got back into calibration. 2 sensory judges were women, 2 sensory judges were men. Their taste balance scores on that espresso completely out of calibration with each other, and the men were really into it, and the women not so much. And so it does go both ways. But yeah, my experience, I've never been a woman in that position facing a panel of men, and I would be really curious to know what that feels like, and if it feels problematic or not. But I will say is we are taking extra effort in how we build these judges panels to mix it up of men and women. And I'll let you know personally, I'm very cognizant of it and tuned into those conversations. And I'm coming to you in a place of optimism. And I feel good about where we are. So, and I'm very grateful the conversation is happening.
That's great. Yeah, I will say that I've been, as a competitor, I've never remembered if I've had 4 men, but I definitely remember walking up to 4 women and being like, I got this. So it definitely goes both ways. So I want to kick this over to Holly. So Holly has had a chance to judge some, we're mostly talking about what's happening in the U.S., but Holly's had a chance to judge some international competitors and has been very big part of the WBC, which is, a whole spectrum of different cultures. As Sarah was talking about, the cultures are different and that sort of thing. And not only just the competitors are different cultures, the judges have a lot of different cultures in the background. So can you speak to a little bit of your experience on that international level in the competitions?
Oh boy. Well, I would say that there are definitely, I would say at least as many men as proportionately in the U.S., probably more actually, less women at the WBC level. And I think part of that's cultural differences and just people maybe not being interested in competing. I don't know for sure. I feel like there are a lot of women in the international judging pool, and some of the most dynamic women I've met in coffee, honestly, like, you know, Sonia and all these just great personalities. But I think it varies from culture to culture, just where people end up in the mix. One of the things I do notice at the world level is that the countries, and it makes perfect sense, the countries that have more resources or are more first world are the ones that typically do advance from round to round, if you look at that. And that's pretty apparent. And there are a lot more men, I would say, that advance, but I think part of it is just there are fewer women in that particular pool. And we talked in the US level, there have been, 7 male wins and 8 and 6. So it's, for as low of a turnout as we have in the US for women, our success rate isn't too shabby. So, you know.
Yeah, I looked back in the past couple years, and it seemed though, and this is true for not just barista, but for Brewers Cup and cup tasters, that about 1/4 of the overall participation is women, but about half of the champions are women in barista. For Brewers Cup, there's only 1 female, 3 male champions. But with the barista competition, 1/4 are women, but yet we have half of the championship. So that's definitely speaking to our talent, I would say. So I want to jump into the barista competition a little bit. So Andrea, I'm going to kick this over to you. Many of you might know, but Andrea has an adorable daughter named River who's been at the competitions, and she's so cute. And, you know, it's, as someone who's just recently got married and thinking about kids, it's something that is, you know, a huge thing that I'm thinking about the future of. How in the world am I going to do all these things when I have kids? And you do them while you have a child and have a business and all that sort of stuff. And so can you speak to just what that's like for you, which is a very different perspective than a man has to generally go through?
Yeah, well, it's definitely been a big transition to go from working like as much as I want all day, every day, to like having a little person that's depending on me for all kinds of things. So, as in all things, like, I think I struggle with balance, like, of where to put importance, and like, our business is important, our family is important, my daughter's really important. So, at least in this season of competition, I'm really lucky in that, my husband's supportive, and, my work is flexible, so I can take some of my work time to devote to competition instead of working like normal and then doing 4 to 5 hours of practice after work. So I think specifically thinking about women in business and competitions, that like the more responsibilities that you get with family and otherwise, like, I think the less interested you might be in coming to compete, because you have to make a choice at some point about where your time goes and what's most important. And it's no small task for any competitor, male or female, to go onto a competition stage and present the level of expertise of technical skills, and also to present a coffee and a story, and like to put out a message about coffee without a lot of dedication. So there just comes a point where you have to make decisions about that, and fortunately I've been able to be afforded the time for that.
So this might be a fairly heavy question, but I thought of this the other day when I was thinking about this. So, you know, when you win the WBC, you have a huge travel commitment and a commitment to be the face of especially coffee for the world. As we've seen, you know, we see Pete travel all over the place, and he's not even the champion anymore, and he's still doing all that sort of stuff. And then I think of, you know, some of my favorite U.S. competitors that are, you know, trying to win that U.S. competition to get to the WBC. And I think of, you know, Trevor Corlett, and I think of Lorenzo, and I think of competitors that are fathers, that are business owners, and they're striving for that championship. And I'm curious to you, knowing the time commitment that would be required of you as a WBC, do you feel like, not in terms of your talent to be able to get a WBC, but do you really feel like that is something that you could actually do? I said it was heavy. I'm sorry.
I didn't get this question card before this. Hi. Could I do it? Yes. Would I do it? I don't know. there's a lot of things in this life that are worth trying and fighting for, and I don't always believe that coffee is the most important.
Good answer. Very good answer. Yeah, go ahead.
In the last panel, when they were talking about risk taking, and we were talking about what happens when you put yourself out there and you fail, like what do you have to lose? The first thing that came to my mind was time with family and time with future children. And I think, I don't know if that's the woman in me or if that's just my personality, but that is on my radar too, is when we take these risks and make these sacrifices, we have that to lose too. And so there's a lot out there that we care about.
Great. Jenny, this is for you. You did such an incredible job your first year competing, obviously because you had not the competition experience, but you were coaching and absolutely a part of it, and that's so cool. I'm curious to know what, after going through Jonathan's experience and watching him compete and participating with there, and then you doing it yourself, what are the differences that you saw in the way that you presented yourself as a competitor and the way you're perceived as a competitor?
So I think one of the things that I have come to realize about Jonathan is that he is such a good balance for me. I approach competition with one thing in mind, and that was to win. I am not going to be, I'm not going to dance around that fact. Like when I compete in something, I compete to win. And I think that I get a lot of negative feedback because of that, because I do have a very competitive personality. And it's taken me a long time to realize that I don't have to apologize for that either. I mean, I'm putting in a just insane amount of time and an insane amount of, work and stress. And I think, along the same lines as Andrea, like I also own a business, and I'm running a business, and I'm managing employees, and, it's not easy. But I think that, Jonathan, when he when he approaches Brewers Cup, and when he did approach Brewers Cup as a competitor, he just has such a way of being able to compartmentalize things that I don't think that I necessarily, if I have it, I don't really enact it very often. But he's able to say, I'm putting in a lot of work, I'm putting in a lot of time, and I'm gonna go and I'm gonna do my best. And he's okay with that. And it's not that that's wrong. There's a way that everybody does something. But I definitely noticed as a coach for him, I was trying to push him in ways that I wanted to be pushed, and not necessarily ways that he wanted to be pushed. So I was always, he practiced incessantly, but I was always, do this, and again. I mean, I sort of like reminded myself of like my piano teacher when I was little, you know what I mean? Like, do the scale again. And he's so good at realizing that, he doesn't react to that. He just knows that's my personality. He's like, okay, that's probably enough out of you for a little bit. But, when it was time for me to compete, I think I was the one pushing myself harder and harder and harder and harder. And he was always good at recognizing, like, you haven't slept in 4 days. Like, you need to get some sleep. You have things that you're trying to do to function as a human, as a business owner, as a wife, as the mother of a beagle. And anybody out there who has a hound dog knows that that's intense, right? And so honestly, it was a very different experience, and it has been a different experience, but I also love the way in which we've been able to balance each other out in that experience too.
That's great. Very cool. So this is a question for all of you. We've had, I'm going to speak to WBC, but this is in reference to all of our coffee competitions. It's been, Holly might be able to say, 16 years of WBC? So 15, 14, yeah. And as you know, no female champion yet. which obviously I work for a larger company. We have about 90 employees, and I would say that 90% of those are women. I work around mostly women, and so when I think about this fact that there's 15 champions and none of them are women, it feels very out of balance with what my perception of who is in the coffee industry. I interact with more women than I do men, but yet I see more men champions in the world level. In the US, thankfully, we've had fairly good balance. So I'm curious for each one of you in your different competitions and your different roles within the competition, what would it mean to you to have a female WBC? Yeah, or just in Brewers Cup, because there hasn't been a female Brewers Cup champion, barista champion, I don't think cup tasters champion, or latte art. So one latte art, yes.
Okay. Just scratch that last one real quick.
We're not doing it, so it doesn't exist. So either any of you guys can grab that and answer first. Jenny, you ready? Andrew?
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Yeah. I don't have a super well-formed answer for this, but I mean, yeah, it'd be awesome to have a female champion for the WBC. I think it would, to me, represent a potential shift worldwide in the amount of women involved in coffee. And what Jess said earlier really resonated with me about, like, if there's a position open, that it's often men in our business that are like, oh, me. Now, it's sometimes a woman, but, like, I think it would just represent like an equaling out of the amount of participants like worldwide, and that perhaps signal that there are more women participating in coffee that are standing up and raising their hands as far as like opportunity for competition and for practice and for access to coffees as well.
So currently, my role as a coffee professional is on the front lines as a barista, bartender. Outside of the coffee industry, I've worked in managerial and decision-making roles. But what I want to say is, as a woman, I feel like I'm constantly having to justify myself as a coffee professional. And so having an example that's clearly there is just so convenient. I find myself shying away from explanation. Like it's complicated to say what I do and what I am passionate about because I don't have that clear title. And I think a lot of you can probably relate to that. And I don't think that there's shame in that. It's just where you are. And there's beauty in that. But having a woman to point to and just an example of coffee professional looks like a lot of things, that it would mean a lot to me.
I think on an international level, in our culture, we are, I don't want to say ahead of the game on, equality, but we're not doing too bad. But I think in a lot of other countries, a female champion might really open some doors really wide that weren't open before, and make a huge difference just to women in general in the whole world, like the whole global scale. So
It's a big deal.
I think I kind of want to add to that I think maybe even before we get to a champion, I think there's so much need for more recognition of women competitors in general. And I guess I talked about this in our email thread, in that, when last year the top two of the Brewers Cup was myself and Sarah Anderson, who I'm not sure if she's here, but hey, Sarah, you're awesome. And I think one of the most immediate things that was discussed was that when Sarah and I were the last two standing, the music that came on was Tom Jones' She's a Lady. And people freaked the freak out about that. And honestly, that people who were coming at that from, a more quote unquote, like feminist perspective, that's one thing. And I can't totally speak for Sarah either, but I also know that there were some interesting things I think that she and I and even other female competitors did in Brewers Cup that nobody talked about. So, interesting things, interesting coffee choices, or interesting brewing methods, or interesting ways of approaching the coffee that we chose, or the coffee, or how we brewed the coffee. And so I think that is almost, I think like the first stepping stone that we need to see is that it's, I don't know, I just, sure, every female should compete if they feel like they want to compete, And so to me, I'm just like, well, yeah, just this shouldn't be a big deal, And so I want there to just be a natural recognition of like, that was a badass routine. Like, let's talk about that, And then, let's establish a solid base for that, and then let's have, women just come in and sweep the whole thing, because that would be awesome, right?
Yeah, it almost felt like when you guys were in there and that song came on and the kind of aftermath of how people felt about that, it was almost more that they were talking about the fact that you were women more than the fact that you guys were first and second in the United States in the Brewers Cup.
Yeah.
Like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Not the fact you were girls, the fact you're good brewers. Like, we want the recognition of that. We don't want that, we're here talking about this, that, as women, but the thing is that we don't want to be good because we're women. We want to be good. And I think
just good, period. Yeah.
And I think that that's what I would say for myself, what a female WBC would be for me, is that, it's not going to be that she's a woman. It's going to be that she's the best barista in the world.
Yes.
And that now, and I spoke to this in the very beginning, I look at other women, I see them be successful, and that makes me want to be as successful as them. And I feel like all of us female competitors now have that person we can go, I want to be just like her. I want to be the next WBC. But right now, unfortunately, we just don't have that. And it's not that we don't want to be Pete or whatever. As a woman, I identify better with a woman.
Yeah, and really nice. This kind of came up in our thread too, is the idea of just female role models in coffee, in general. And I had named some of mine. Kimalena Ionescu, I think she's incredible. Katie Cargiulo is really great. She knows her shit, and she's fun to watch. At competition. There's so many others who are out there. And I think maybe even one of the challenges to women becoming involved in competition and being a competitor is first even understanding who are the other women who I can even look up to in this industry. Whether it's women who have competed or not, it's just the idea that there are so many women in the specialty coffee industry who are worthy of being admired. Yeah. And, what is it that they have accomplished, or what is it that they can teach us, and what is it that, we might have the opportunity to say to them, sensei, And so, to me, that's a really important thing, is that there's a lot of, I think, kind of foundational things to maybe address, before we can kind of build on those things. And I just am really, I'm passionate about, young coffee professionals being able to identify, those people, and and even people who aren't young coffee professionals, but just being able to identify who are those people who we can look up to as leaders, in the specialty coffee industry, and then build on that.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome. All right, guys, we're getting kind of towards the end, so I want to open up to questions. Anybody have any questions for these guys?
Yes. As a judge, I'd like to know, are there any trends that you've noticed between female competitors and male competitors? Because I've heard that female competitors tend to not give nearly as much coffee information. That's just an example. So are there any trends that you've noticed?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, now that it's 10 minutes, we hardly give any information. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know necessarily that this is a trend, because this seems to be unique to specialty coffee. We are story-focused people. And I see that consistently in female competitors, but I also see it in the male competitors. We are story-focused people. We like to connect the dots across the coffee chain, and we're all about collaboration. And
What are you talking about?
oh. Well, I mean, but when we talk...
That was my presentation.
So I can't say definitively that I can nail one trend to men and one trend to women, but I do see consistently throughout coffee, we are story-focused people, and that is how we share our industry and grow our industry. But I will also say that innovation is not stuck to either gender either. And if I learned one huge thing from tonight, it's be brave, be innovative, and don't underestimate yourself, because I mean, we can fail, and what do we have to lose? And so, I mean, if I were going to compete, I would do something just wacky, because why not?
Why not?
Yes.
I'm not certain, does the IWCA, are they involved with baristas as well? And if they are, how?
Onxy?
Yeah, so the IWC currently is focusing on more producer women. That's not to say that they're not involving barista women, but it's just that research has shown that the area that is so important to, at least right now, that we're noticing is the sustainability of coffee. And one of the major areas of that is that women are involved in the processing side, but don't get taken out, literally taken out of the sales and marketing side. And focusing on that and enabling, empowering those women to really be able to sell the coffee that they are so involved in from the infancy, that's kind of been the focus. That's not to say that barista women are taken out from that. But we were just actually talking about this at break, that we really want to elevate the option for women all over to feel like, the IWC nowhere does it say that it's only for growers, but that's what the focus has been. If more barista women are able to come forward and say, we want to talk about this, I don't think they would say no, they would welcome that, so.
Yeah, we're definitely interested in having that conversation. Any more questions?
Last question. So kind of what Jenny was talking about like what people, no one was talking about your routine and was done. I have a question about competitions in general, that how do we celebrate everyone who came out with awesome routines? Like, I feel like in general, whether it's a dude or not a dude who won, we just focus on winning, which just makes sense as competition. But like so many cool things happen on stage that just get lost in the shuffle. Like, how do we not do that?
We're all just staring at each other. Who wants to judge, actually? Then you can see it all, and then you can live tweet it or something, right? I mean, I don't know. I think, in my experience as a coach, I went back and forth between wanting to watch every competitor and wanting to watch none of them because, obviously I was there for Jonathan, but it was awesome when you got to watch other people compete and see the things that they were doing. I mean, sometimes it's just watching the fact that somebody took the personal risk to be a part of the competition. And sometimes that is the most inspiring thing. Obviously, we are here to elevate coffee within this competition as well. But, you just have to give props to people who are just like, yeah, I'm going to compete. I don't know why the hell I'm doing it because every ounce of me is saying don't do this. But they do it anyway, and that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think one way that's probably going to be an important thing in the future is the way we structure the competitions. I'm going to be honest, watching barista competitions. I think they're the most boring thing ever. And it's just the truth. I don't really want to watch someone make an espresso and a cappuccino when I do that every single day. And so, the signature drink is like the only part I can get excited about. So I think in the future, and as we all know, we're doing this qualifying event because the competitions was canceled, and then everyone freaked out, and so now they're back, but it's this kind of Band-Aid this year. But just so everybody knows, the BGA, the Roasters Guild, and the Competition Committee are committed to finding an alternative that will be sustainable from here on out. And we're having our first meeting this week for our Competitions Advisory Board. And I think one of the things that we're going to have to look to for the future is getting consumers involved, because we can all be a little bit jaded when it comes to competitions, because this is something we do all the time, and this is our industry. And I think getting some consumer excitement is going to be a really good revitalization of what we do. I've seen these incredible bartender competitions and these chef competitions. It's like, why can't we be doing something that's that exciting? We are doing something that's that exciting, except for putting it in a little room in a conference center, and no one's coming to it but us. So I think that's one of the opportunities is getting it more consumer friendly. So, all right. I don't know if I want to go there.
But to add to that, don't you think this industry is so awesome? It's so baller. It's so creative. Don't you think to add to that, we can also rework the rules and the matrix by which we score people to incentivize?
Yes.
Because we're talking about a deficit of females competing and successfully competing.
Yeah.
Like, you're talking about restructuring the competition. Why not also restructure how we score the competition?
I think we need an entirely weekend of
Yeah.
itself to talk about
Yeah,
that.
that's a bigger thing. Yeah, because the competitions. Yeah, the competition, the rules and regs and all that kind of stuff is not on a US level. That's a big WBC level. I will say, I know that the WBC committee is contemplating the future of what competition will look like. So I don't think that's not far off. I will say that. Julie.
So a question, but I wanted to actually briefly take the opportunity to promote the Bloom events that we developed. Do you want a mic for that? Yeah. So more I come to the question of I'm not a competitor. I'm never going to be a competitor. In fact, I really enjoy helping run competitions and stuff. And I look around this room and I see volunteers and judges and people mostly women and behind the scenes and things like that. And so, I think that some people do have a competitive drive. I'm definitely very competitive as well, but I just don't choose to express myself in that way. And so, in a lot of ways, I think what we're talking about is we want to acknowledge awesome routines, right? We want to have these conversations about the substance. And so, that's actually where Bloom comes from, is that we're doing this event March 3rd in LA. We have satellite events happening in Boston. We're locking things down in the Bay Area, New York, things like that, to come together to have speakers talk about innovation things. We have Charles Levinsky talking, we have Katie Cardula talking about quality, we have a beer journalist talking about coffee and beer, Sarah Bennett, and then, just because we actually want to just connect people so that we can have those conversations. And so I think it's looking at competitions and seeing where we can improve it and really dissecting it, but also providing alternatives, right, to actually continue to have, this is a perfect example. It's awesome to just see people and have these conversations. And hopefully have more conversations.
Yeah, cool. All right, any last questions?
We're going to wrap it up. I'm freezing. Okay. Do you got a question? Oh, no, you're just cold too. Okay, cool. All right, you guys. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.